Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Student of the Game. I am Kyle Nass, the Student of the Game, and listen, if you're here, chances are you like talking sport. We're glad you're doing it with us. I'm going to go full Chris Berman on this one. Let me be among the last to wish you a happy new year here in 2025. Obviously, the Student of the Game has been off the past couple weeks due to holidays and things. And also bowl game stuff. I was really busy this week doing bowl game coverage with Fans for Sports Network and all that. Well, listen, but Kyle, you didn't do the bell. That was a plug. We're getting to why with that in a minute, but doing a series of playoff preview action here, coming back with a vengeance here, of course, as you were hearing this tonight on the Student of the Game, of course, with Mike the Burn Bernier. We will be doing NFL awards. I'll definitely bell that one. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Candy Waller coming in, our favorite from Seawall Sports, to talk about the Commanders and the upcoming playoff game. I didn't think they made the playoffs. She said they would. She gets to do the very victory lap on the show. This is what we do here. So, shouts to Seawall, of course, of Bowie TV, Madam President herself. But enough about that. The bell talk. We all know it was Bing Jim Beast of the Hull Up Network that actually purchased the bell so I don't keep voice acting bing every time I do a plug. But now the guy that is responsible for one of the many bings that happens on a regular basis, he covers the Steelers primarily with the Steel Curtain Network, but I know him as one of the main men that takes care of business at the Fans for Sports Network. My guy coming in, Jeff Hartman, first time here on the Student of the Game podcast. Glad to have you in, man. This is awesome. I've been excited about this for a minute.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you're one of these. You're of the right age group, is how I'll put it. To when there was a brief kind of a rivalry light with the Jags and the Steelers, so I knew it would be only about every time you'd be on the show anyway. But you're in here. I'm gonna ask this question, and obviously people can accuse bias here, but that's fine. I'm still gonna ask it anyway. As a Niner fan, it's always a big deal when they play the Seahawks. Everybody, of course, NFL-wise, talks about Green Bay and the Bears, the Packers and the Bears being the oldest rivalry. Like, people don't even know what a Decatur Staley is. That's how far back that goes, okay? But for me, and it's been this way for a while, the Steelers and the Ravens are still the best rivalry in the league. Do you agree?
Yes. I think when you look at, and it's been a brief history compared to some of those other matchups that you talked about, but they're highly contested. And then when you think about the amount of one-score football games amongst these two teams, and then when you think about the head coaches and how many times Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, I believe, are only behind that Bears-Packers with Curly Lambeau and George Halas rivalry. They're the only two coaches that have played more. There's a lot to this. You can add in the physicality, and the Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco era of this rivalry was different. It was a different time. It was a different NFL. I mean, could you imagine if Patrick Mahomes took a Haloti Ngata hand to his face like Ben Roethlisberger did, and his nose was crooked?
Shaped like a Z.
Yes. Haloti Ngata would.
Yes.
If that happened today with Patrick Mahomes or even Tom Brady, then I guess Haloti Ngata would still be in prison serving his sentence, to put it that way. So you have these moments and you have these significant games, and this Saturday night is just going to be the next chapter in that story where, you have the Troy Polamalu 2009 interception return for a touchdown against a young Joe Flacco at Heinz Field. That place was rocking. You had the Baltimore Ravens go into Pittsburgh. I think that might have been 2015, and they beat the Steelers in the wild card round. And that was where the Steelers lost Le'Veon Bell with injury. And there's a lot of these stories. I could keep going, but yes, to answer your question, it's a long-winded answer. I absolutely think that it is the best rivalry in the NFL right now.
Listen, long-winded is some of these later Star Wars films. You had a passionate answer that filled every bit of the celluloid in question. Proverbial celluloid. This is the internet. But first of all, listen, the only pushback I have, two pushbacks. A, first of all, you imply a cell could hold Haloti Ngata. I object. B, we would be remiss. Let's give the Ravens fans a little something. I know at some point I'm going to have my good friend from the Gould Clued, Nicholas, on to represent the Ravens at some point here. Shouts to Nick, of course. He's in Denmark. That's why I say Danish. It's a thing.
Yeah.
So, but to not acknowledge the game where Torrey Smith then dropped a touchdown pass and then caught it 2 plays later for probably still a painful memory. Apologies, but Flacco and that group pulling that out. The guys that have won games, Byron Leftwich and Charlie Bash for the Steelers, doing things. It's just pulling names out of the sky for guys that have produced in this football game on both sides is what makes it great for me too. Not just the black and blue nature. I get to do this for you the first time, flash my O-lineman credentials about why I like black and blue games there for those listening on the audio feed. That would be me flashing my Aaron Evans original again. You know how that goes. But let's get into the game itself, man, because I'll tell you, this one is tough for me. I don't know. I am a guy who is, I'll lead with this. I am always and have been for some time pro Russell Carrington Wilson after, let's say, his 3rd year. As a rookie, called him overrated for most of the time. Hey, listen, there's no shame in being carried by the Legion of Boone and Marshawn Lynch. But as he got older, I've been pro him. I think he was put into a bad situation in Denver. I was one of the few battling the Russell Wilson is washed narrative, and then was proven right after Nathaniel Hackett got a game ball for beating the mess that he caused. Whatever, we're tangent. That's my fault. But going into this game, the reason obviously the offense has been struggling a bit. Pickens has been hurt. Rusty has had a little trouble finding his way in that offense, but I'm not prepared to knock the Steelers just out yet, because I feel like for every bit of issues with offensive weapons the Steelers have, I've not exactly been fond of the Ravens offensive line throughout the year. Is that enough for a puncher's chance for the Steelers?
Oh, I think the Steelers definitely have a puncher's chance. Why? It's Steelers-Ravens, and these games are normally close, and it comes down to which way the ball bounces, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. But in terms of Russell Wilson, the last 4 weeks, the Steelers have lost 4 straight games heading into the playoffs, and that's, everyone knows that's been paying attention. Russell Wilson has not played. He hasn't played well, but he hasn't also equated in losses. He's made just critical mistakes at really critical junctures of contests. And some of the stuff that he's doing is the antithesis of what you would expect a veteran quarterback to do. So when you go back to the last Ravens game in Baltimore, that's a Saturday night game in Baltimore. The Steelers offense is about to drive and take the lead, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. They're already in Chris Boswell's range. And what does Russell Wilson do? He's driving to the goal line, and instead of sliding or just avoiding a tackler, he tries to take him on, fumbles at the 4, and the Ravens drive 96 yards the other way. It's a 14-point swing, and the game wasn't the same since then. You can throw in the Marlon Humphrey pick 6 later in the game, and that just sealed the deal. You can go to Kansas City, okay? In Kansas City, and that's a Christmas Day game. Not a lot of rest there between the 2 games, but he tries to throw to Pat Freiermuth, doesn't see Reed, the safety, coming over the top, and it's an interception in the red zone. Like, these are back-breaking plays. You could even go back further if you wanted, and this is a trend, and I would even include the Saturday game against Cincinnati in Week 18. The Steelers get the football, and with about 50 seconds left in the game, Russell Wilson escapes the pocket. He has the option to throw it away to stop the clock or run out of bounds, and instead, he actually tries to turn it upfield, and he gets tackled. They waste about 20 seconds. In the next snap, he gets sacked, and they have to burn their lone timeout. These are mistakes that you would not expect. If Justin Fields did it, you'd say, he's a young guy still. And even then, I would expect Justin Fields, with his experience in the NFL, to know better than to do things like this.
Right.
Russell Wilson has been making these mistakes in these last 4 weeks. And so with that being said, I want to mention that if Russell Wilson can clean up his game, the rest of it has been okay. He still can deliver the long ball. The deep pass is there. He's going to get better help. George Pickens had an awful game on Saturday against Cincinnati. I don't expect him to have a repeat of that. If Russell Wilson can just clean up those mistakes, I like the Steelers' chances, absolutely.
Yeah, well, and I'll add this too. I think what makes it more shocking with Rusty doing that sort of thing is the history he has of doing literally the exact opposite in those crunch time positions. He has broken the heart of 31 NFL teams and had a chance to do it 32, but then Hackett took him off the field and had McManus try a 63-yard. I'm still bitter about that, apparently. But you know exactly what I'm talking about, too. So this is why it's kind of tough to see. But in a playoff scenario, listen, Rusty has his own demons. I don't know how much Lamar Jackson's feeling it, but you got to know there's some pressure there, too, for all the, I would call them relatively false narratives. Yes, there's a lot of L's next to L-Jack's playoff stats, but there's also a certain element of him having done his job a lot of times and the team not following up. So, I mean, it's a very tricky thing there too. There's so many intangibles to this game. This is why don't pick it, by the way. It's a 9.5 point spread. I'm still saying don't touch this. I'm not a degenerate. I don't do the betting, but it's still danger. Will Robinson is all I can think of. Take the under. That's the only
Take the under, but honestly, I know that the last time they played, it was a 34-17 final score. Mm-hmm. That is an aberration in this rivalry.
Yes.
Okay. For the Steelers to get doubled up. And also, if you watch that football game, that pick six, and it was close in the second half. It was not a blowout. People will look at the final and say, man, the Ravens just blew the doors off the Steelers. They didn't. They did not. The Steelers were in control of that game for a large portion of it, and then they just had a couple things not go their way. And let's also not forget, in that contest, there were 3 fumbles by the Ravens, and the ball literally just did not bounce the Steelers' way. Alex Highsmith strip sack Lamar Jackson. They couldn't get the football. I think it was Desmond King returning a punt, and Mark Robinson, special teamer, puts his helmet on the ball. It bounced right to a Raven. You can't fault people for that, but that's just the way the ball bounces, literally and figuratively. That game was closer. I would say if I'm betting on this game, I'm taking the Steelers in the points. I'm not sure if I'm taking them on the money line, but if I'm getting 10, and you can still get some books giving 10, I would take the 10 points. I just think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a closer game than people think.
Yeah, well, and I'm with that too. I'm with you. I don't, first of all, I have a rule of not touching rivalry games in general, or advising touching rivalry games, as well as ones that matter, which the past 2 for the Steelers and the Ravens have not. So, no. So, listen, the only one that's more awkward, I would say, is the AFC East. Stay the hell out of that. Teams become completely different identities. I'm still scarred from having picked the Dolphins to go 7-9 in 2018, 6-10 in 2018, and they went 7-9 because of that Miami Miracle where somebody had Gronk trying to tackle. Shouts to my guy Antoine Staley, but I predicted that. You're correct. I got screwed by Gronk. Anyway, I'm tangenting all over the place, man. That's what makes these fun. No, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. What gets me most worried though is there's a low margin of error for albeit an excellent Steelers defense. Listen, There's a reason that those of us in the know are bringing up TJ Watt's name as an MVP candidate. The press corps out there, by and large, cowards. They're not going to do it, obviously. And I'm sorry, but the real truth is my vote would be for Chris Jones ahead of TJ Watt. Call me crazy. But listen, you see what the Chiefs have done, and they didn't do it with Patrick LeBron Mahomes II. Just saying. But with that in mind, what element of the Ravens side kind of scares you the most? I mean, is this something where if the Ravens somehow are actually committed to the run, they win, or what? Give me something there that you're worried about seeing the Ravens do well. If the Ravens do what well, it spells doom for the Steelers.
If they control the line of scrimmage with the ground game, they win. That's it. Go back to their first meeting in Pittsburgh. 18-16 final score. Pittsburgh wins. All Chris Boswell field goals. Shockingly, a little tidbit of information. The second game this year that the Steelers won with all field goals. The other one was week 1 in Atlanta, but it's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
In that game, the Steelers controlled the line of scrimmage. They dictated what Derrick Henry could and could not do. They forced turnovers, and they forced Lamar to have to throw the football. Lamar still moved the ball, and they're going to surrender yards. But when the field got short, everything tightened up. And now all of a sudden, Lamar Jackson was struggling to put points on the board. In the second meeting, Derrick Henry went off. He had his best game ever in his career against Pittsburgh, which before that game, I think the highest he ever rushed for, whether it's in Tennessee or in Baltimore, was 75 yards. He went over 100. They rushed for over 220 yards against the Steelers, and that dictated everything. In the second half, they just abused the Steelers' defensive front. Now, I do think that, Alex Highsmith is fully healthy in this game. TJ Watt's going to be healthy in this game. We forget that TJ Watt was injured in that Philadelphia game prior to the Ravens game, was not 100%. You could tell he seems to be back. But if the Steelers especially, and I don't know Zay Flowers' status, but if he does not play in this game, which it's expected that he's not, that helps the Steelers because now if Rashad Bateman is wide receiver 1, Nelson Aguilar, maybe Justice Hill out of the backfield. You got the tight ends that scares me in and of itself with Andrews and Likely, but it allows them to not have to put so much attention on the passing game and can focus on stopping the run. If the Steelers can slow down the running game, and I'll say keep them south of 170 as a team total, I like the Steelers' chances.
Well, and I feel inclined to bring this up as well. As I mentioned that same 2018 season, Minkah Fitzpatrick's a dude I've been following for a minute. What's his status, and how big is he in stopping the tight end attack?
Well, he's going to be big, and they're going to have to utilize him. Deshaun Elliott will be in this game. He was not in the last game, and Deshaun Elliott has been a huge component in the Steelers secondary. He has allowed Minkah Fitzpatrick to do more in the deep secondary and not having to play around the line of scrimmage. But I would expect if Zay Flowers doesn't play, Joey Porter Jr. is up across from Bateman. You have Dante Jackson or Corey Trice across from probably Nelson Aguilar. You have Minkah on one tight end, and you've got Deshaun Elliott on the other. If you're running 2 tight ends, and DeMonte Casey can play center field, if I'm the coach, that's what I'm doing, and I like that. But if Zay Flowers is in the lineup, that changes everything.
Of course,
because now all of a sudden you have different assignments and stuff. But still, Minkah Fitzpatrick has been having a good season. I wouldn't say a great season,
right?
And he hasn't had the splash. In the last 2 years, he only has 1 interception, and that was against Baltimore the last time they played at M&T Stadium. So I don't know. We've been waiting so long for that Minkah magic to come back, and we haven't seen that really since 2023 and even 2022, I should say. He didn't have an interception last year. So since 2022, could this be the game? And he's gotten these against Lamar Jackson before. Could this be the game that he has a Minkah magic moment and we see something special? I don't know.
So, hey, listen, with Zay Flowers out, if they're attacking the tight ends, one might even say that is likely. Anyway, this is what I do on this show. Sorry, Jeff. I should have warned you. I put that in mind. No, so yeah, I get all that too. And listen, I say what you will about the other games. There are other games that I think have me wondering what if, like, this isn't a Marvel series, obviously, but, I have questions about the Texans. I'm going to be talking, of course, with Huddle Up's Big Jim Neese, who's a Cowboys fan, but he's a Jim Harbaugh homer because he's a Michigan fan, so that still works. I mean, we're pro Harbaugh on this show. I'm a Niners fan. There we go. But that game has questions. I'm thinking the Commanders have their shot to beat the Bucs. I think the Packers could be dangerous against the Eagles, but this game among them is going to be the most compelling football to watch. That's where I sit. That's where I live. That's what I'm saying.
If you listen to national pundits, they're going to say this game is over before it even starts. But if you follow the teams that are actually playing and you know this rivalry well, and I'm going to be honest, national pundits don't, then this game is a toss-up. It is a toss-up. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter the 5-game winning streak for Baltimore. It doesn't matter the 4-game losing streak for Pittsburgh. I've said this ad nauseum leading up to this game on all of my podcasts. Weird stuff happens in these games. Really weird crap happens in these games. And you could go back this season. I could rattle off a slew of things that happened both pro Ravens and pro Steelers in these 2 matchups this season. Who's going to come out on top could be who wins those weird moments where the ball's bouncing around. Who gets it? Is there a pick six? Is there a defensive score? Is there a special team score? Do we have a punt return for a touchdown? Weird stuff happens in these games, and a lot of times that turns the tide one way or the other.
Hey, listen, if you want me to defend the national media, though, you're on the wrong show. But first of all, hey, listen, I know we're not on the typical show, but you know well enough that I do this in my spare time. I say spare time. Bam, right here, okay? I defend Trevor Lawrence from Emmanuel Acho all the time. You don't have to tell me about the national media, okay? There we go. So let me put that back. I just had to put that reminder in place for you. Yes, it was a cheap plug in front of the boss, but I don't care, whatever. So, no, man, this is awesome. I think, listen, I don't think there's too much more I can add to that. This is definitely one of the Student of the Game episodes where I got to be more of a student for sure. But the point you make about, I don't know anything. By the way, I checked 43.5 is the number for the over-under that I got off of ESPN. Maybe that 9.5 or 10 is the safer bet. I don't know. Like I said, I don't do the betting. I just pretend like I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. That's what I do.
Well, the weather is going to be bad in Baltimore on Saturday. Really cold, chance of snow. I would hammer the under in that in 43.5, especially if the weather is consistent to what they're predicting. And then you got to think, okay, who's going to be able to run the ball better? Who's going to be able to make timely passes? We'll see. It's going to be interesting. I totally get why some people say that this game is a non-compete thing. Like, it's not even going to be close, but I've seen enough of these Steelers-Ravens games in my life that I know it's going to be close.
Hey, people have bet Russell Carrington, Wilson, plenty, myself included in the past, and gotten burned. So, listen, at the end of the day, I completely understand, right? I could tell you some stories, but we'll leave it at that. Jeff, thanks for jumping in. Tell the world where you and the Steel Curtain Network could be found.
Yeah, so if you want to check out our Steelers coverage, you can go to anywhere where you get your podcasts and search Steel Curtain Network or even Steelers, and we'll be one of the top options for you there. So you can follow us there. My podcast that I do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning by myself is Let's Ride. Check it out. Give it a listen. And if you want to check out our website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, it's a branch of fansfirstsports.com. We do hope you check that out. There's a lot of Steelers coverage there, getting you ready for this wild card game.
So, yeah, there you go. Jeff Hartman doing a thing. Thanks for jumping in. And, of course, I'm Kyle Nash, a student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. I'm one of the cool kids, Jeff. Blue Sky as well as the student of the game on Facebook. Of course, check out my writings on the aforementioned Fans First Sports Network covering the Orlando Magic, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and, of course, if you hadn't gotten around to checking the bowl coverage for the Fuller Bowl games, the Cure Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, and the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I mean, hey, I have that up there too. I got my ceremonial Pop-Tarts there. My box is in the corner. I got that there too for those that are watching the video. But yeah, check me out all those places, not to mention the Black and Gold Banneret doing my thing covering UCF football, basketball, both men's and women's, and anything else there surrounding. I jump in there as well. We just did the Night Shift Live podcast, so make sure you check that out on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. I always give that a ding because we hit 1,000 subscribers last month. Bam! So for Jeff Hartman and whoever is smart enough to watch this game, because it's going to be a good one, this is Kyle Nash, the Steel Game. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.